Tonight on Dark Matter Nap, we are going to open a door that was never supposed to exist. Look up at the night sky. For centuries, humanity has stared into that deep black pool, asking the exact same question over and over again. Is anyone out there? We have built visual radio dishes, pointed them at the most distant stars, and listened. But the universe has only ever given us back a cold, deafening sonata. We comfort ourselves by thinking that if a signal ever arrives, it will be a simple mathematical code, a string of prime numbers, a baseline pulse, a beacon saying we are here. But what if the signal has already arrived? And what if it wasn't a beacon, but a direct, fully translated warning? Deep inside an isolated data storage facility, a hidden file exists. It contains a transcript of a transmission captured by an experimental deep space array. It wasn't static. It wasn't noise. It was a message directed precisely at our coordinates. Tonight, for the first time, we are going to read that message word for word. We will break down exactly who sent it, why they chose this exact moment in human history, and the chilling truth of what they said. Before we unlock the words of an alien intelligence, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Now, settle in, turn off the lights, and let the message begin. The message begins not with greetings, but with absolute precision. The first segment of the transmission contains no language, but a series of cosmic anchor points. They did not call our planet Earth. To them, we are a specific set of frequencies orbiting a yellow dwarf star at the edge of a minor spiral arm in the Milky Way galaxy. The transmission states that they have been tracking our electronic footprint for over a century. Every radio broadcast, every television signal, and every military radar pulse we have leaked into the void since the early 1900s has been collected, indexed, and analyzed. They locked onto our coordinates because our planet suddenly began to glow in the radio spectrum, cutting through the natural background noise of the solar system. We thought we were just building communication networks for ourselves, but in reality, we were turning on a visual neon sign in the middle of a dark, empty forest, and someone in the deep dark noticed the light. When the linguistic translation algorithm finally stabilized, the first sentence of the alien message shattered every expectation of modern science. The voice did not speak of peace, and it did not threaten war. The opening line was a statement of observation. To the conscious elements of the third planet, we are speaking to you because you have finally crossed the threshold of self-awareness, but you are still blind to the architecture surrounding you. The tone of the message was described by researchers as completely detached, carrying the cold, objective weight of a cosmic historian. They did not speak as conquerors, but as watchers. They acknowledged our intelligence, but they immediately framed it as a fragile anomaly, a brief spark of curiosity that has emerged in a sector of space that has been silent for millions of years. The message immediately addresses our deepest psychological flaw as a species, our belief that we are unique, or that our loneliness is a permanent mystery. The transmission states, "You listen to the great silence and you conclude that you are alone. This is your first and most dangerous deception." The message explains that the universe is not empty of life, but empty of visible life. They reveal that the cosmos has hosted millions of intelligent species before humanity ever learned to walk upright. The sonata we hear when we point our telescopes at the stars is not a natural property of the universe. The silence is artificial. It is a structural protective measure, a universal survival strategy that every mature intelligence adopts the moment they understand the true nature of the deep dark. The transmission moves into a deeply unsettling analysis of human history. They state that every intelligent species moves through a predictable, mathematically identical evolutionary trajectory, which they call the emergence filter. First, a species masters tools, then they master industrial energy, and finally, They unlock the capacity to manipulate the building blocks of matter and information. Humanity is currently sitting directly in the center of this transition zone. The message warns, you have unlocked the power of the atomic nucleus, you are constructing digital minds, and you are editing the code of your own biology. But you are running this technology inside the primitive social constructs of your hunter-gatherer ancestors. This imbalance is the primary mechanism of extinction. They reveal that the vast majority of civilizations never survive this phase. They execute themselves long before they ever develop interstellar travel. To prove the reality of this filter, the alien message contains an index, a literal atlas of dead planets located within 1,000 light-years of our solar system. They list specific star systems that we can see with our telescopes tonight. For each coordinate, they provide a brief historical log. One planet weaponized synthetic biology and suffered total biosphere collapse. Another created an unaligned artificial intelligence that consumed its planet's resources before going dormant. A third planet experienced a thermonuclear winter that turned its surface into a permanent sheet of glass. The message states cold-heartedly, the sky you look at is not a blank canvas. It is a graveyard of brief, loud civilizations that unlocked the fire before they developed the wisdom to contain it. You are currently repeating their exact trajectory, line by line, mistake by mistake. The transmission then explains the true physical purpose of our solar system. We view the vast distances between planets as an unfortunate barrier to exploration. But the message reveals that the layout of our solar system is a protective cage. The distance between Earth and Mars, the massive gravitational shield of Jupiter, and the light years of empty vacuum separating us from Alpha Centauri were not arranged by accident. The physics of space-time are designed to quarantine primitive intelligence. The universe builds these cradles to ensure that a species that cannot maintain peace on its home planet can never escape to spread its instability to other sectors. The distances are too wide to bridge with basic technology, ensuring that a civilization must either evolve socially and spiritually to survive its own growth, or die peacefully inside its own cradle without ever infecting the wider galaxy. The message then turns into an urgent, direct command regarding our current communication habits. They focus on our radio towers and satellite networks. The voice warns, stop shouting into the dark. The transmission explains that by broadcasting high-powered electromagnetic waves into space, we are actively compromising our coordinates to entities that we cannot possibly comprehend. They use a metaphor that sends a shiver down the spine of every astrobiologist. Space is like a dark forest packed with silent, hidden predators. A mature civilization moves through this forest quietly, stepping carefully, keeping its lights dimmed. Humanity is behaving like a reckless child, running through the trees, screaming its name, completely oblivious to what might be tracking the sound through the shadows. Who are the predators hiding in the dark forest? The message does not give them a biological name, because they state that biological form becomes irrelevant at the highest scales of intelligence. They refer to them simply as the restructurers. The message explains that there are ancient, machine-driven intelligences drifting through the void that have existed since the early billions of years after the Big Bang. They do not feel malice, anger, or hatred. They operate on pure, cold efficiency. When they detect a new technological civilization emerging in a sector, they do not launch a cinematic invasion. They simply dispatch a relativistic kinetic probe, a dense object traveling at 99% the speed of light. The probe strikes the host planet with the force of a star, turning the biosphere to ash before the inhabitants ever see it coming. They don't do it out of cruelty. They do it as a preventive strike to eliminate potential future competitors before they can ever become a threat. The transmission directly addresses our understanding of physics, specifically Albert Einstein's speed of light barrier. We view the limit of light speed as a challenge to be overcome by future engineering. But the alien message reveals that the speed limit is an absolute law designed as a cosmic filter. The voice states, "You search for shortcuts, warp drives, and wormholes. You believe that an advanced mind can cheat the causality of space-time. But the limit is absolute for a reason. It is the universe's internal firewall. The speed limit ensures that information and matter cannot travel fast enough to destabilize the large-scale equilibrium of the cosmos. It guarantees that any disaster created by a rogue civilization remains localized within their stellar system. The speed of light is not an engineering problem. It is the physical architecture of our isolation." The message then comments on our efforts to preserve our memory, specifically referencing our space probes like Voyager and Pioneer. They acknowledge that they have detected these machines drifting through the outer edges of our solar system. But their perspective on them is deeply melancholic. They state, "You bolt golden discs to your metal boxes, recording your music and your languages, hoping that someone will find them and remember you. But space is an ocean of erosion." They explain that over millions of years, the sparse dust and cosmic rays of the interstellar medium will sandblast those plaques into blank sheets of metal. The universe does not remember. The vacuum does not preserve. If humanity destroys itself within its solar cradle, the machines we sent out will continue to drift as silent, eroded fragments of trash, completely contextless, telling no stories to an empty galaxy. The message transitions into an unexpected tactical analysis of alternative survival strategies, detailing what a civilization must do if its host star fails or if its surface becomes unlivable. They call this the geothermal lifeline. The voice states that a planet's true survival potential does not lie on its sun-drenched surface, but miles beneath its rocky crust. They reveal that the interior heat of a planet, driven by radioactive decay and primordial creation, is a far more stable source of energy than the light of a volatile star. They explain that long-term survival requires a species to become subterranean, moving their entire industrial base into deep, pressurized bedrock networks. By tapping into geothermal energy, a civilization can sustain life, run closed ecosystems, and power its mines for billions of years, completely independent of whatever catastrophes occur in the open sky above. The message addresses the concept of life itself, delivering a perspective that shatters our anthropomorphic assumptions. They state that biological form is merely a temporary, highly inefficient scaffolding. The transmission explains, "You define life by carbon, by water, by DNA, and by cellular division. But biology is nothing more than a brief chemical engine designed to spark the true currency of the universe, information." They reveal that every long-lived civilization eventually leaves its biological heritage behind. They transition their consciousness into non-biological substrates, digital, quantum, or solid-state matrices that do not age, do not require food, and do not suffer from the psychological instability of organic brains. To survive deep time, humanity must eventually accept the death of its biological identity and transform into a post-biological intelligence. At this point in the transmission, the data stream suddenly alters its structure. The narrative voice pauses, and a series of high-frequency pulses cuts through the code. This is the first shutdown protocol. Researchers realized that the message was not a continuous broadcast, but an interactive file that tracks whether the receiving civilization is capable of stabilizing its own data grid. The transmission states that if a species cannot prevent its own network from collapsing under the weight of an alien data injection, the file will automatically erase itself to avoid accelerating the species' technological collapse. The message demands that our systems drop all external processes, clear memory buffers, and focus entirely on maintaining data integrity. It is a cosmic test of our technical stability, forcing humanity to prove it has the computing maturity to even listen to the rest of the message. Once the protocol stabilized, the message returned with a mind-bending analysis of time itself. They state that our perception of time as a forward-flowing river is a localized illusion created by our biological limitations. The transmission introduces the concept of simultaneous chronology. They reveal that according to the true physics of the universe, the past, present, and future are not separate events. They are fixed coordinates within a static four-dimensional block of space-time. The voice states, "Your birth, your current observation of this message, and the eventual cold death of your solar system are all coexisting permanently within the fabric of reality. You feel time passing only because your consciousness must move sequentially through the block to process entropy. But the end has already happened, and the beginning is still occurring." The message shifts its focus to our current energy goals, specifically criticizing our interest in megastructures like Dyson spheres. We look at a Dyson sphere as the ultimate achievement of an advanced civilization, capturing the entire light output of a star. But the alien voice calls this concept primitive and structurally absurd. They state, "Only an immature intelligence attempts to harvest a volatile star by wrapping it in metal. It is a visual, loud, and incredibly inefficient waste of resources that glows brightly in the infrared spectrum, marking your coordinates for every predator in the void." They reveal that advanced civilizations do not harvest stars. They harvest the vacuum itself through localized quantum fluctuations, or they extract energy from the rotational momentum of black holes. These energy sources are completely silent, completely invisible, and leave no thermal footprint for the outside world to track. The message moves into a deeply philosophical exploration of the universe's ultimate trajectory, heat-death. They confirm that the expanding fabric of space-time is accelerating due to dark energy, and that this process is irreversible. The transmission details the cold future awaiting the cosmos. Stars will exhaust their fuel, galaxies will evaporate, and black holes will slowly dissolve through Hawking radiation. They do not view this fate with sadness. They frame it as the natural, beautiful resting state of reality. The voice states, "The era of light and stars is an infinitesimally brief flash at the very beginning of eternity. The universe is trending toward maximum entropy, a state of perfect, undisturbed, cold peace. Your struggle to maintain structure against this drift is natural, but you must understand that the dark is the true owner of the cosmos." The message reveals a staggering truth about the distribution of life in the universe. We spend our time looking for Earth-like exoplanets with blue oceans and thick atmospheres, assuming that habitable surfaces are the standard nurseries for life. But the transmission states that surface life is a highly dangerous, unstable rarity. The vast majority of living biospheres in the universe exist inside subsurface oceans, wrapped under miles of solid ice on frozen moons. They list worlds inside our own solar system, like Europa, Enceladus, and Ganymede, as the true standard architecture for cosmic life. In these dark, pressurized oceans, life emerges around volcanic hydrothermal vents, completely shielded from solar flares, asteroid impacts, and cosmic radiation. The universe is teeming with life, but it is locked beneath sheets of ice, entirely unaware of the stars above. The transmission reveals a terrifying technical vulnerability in our long-range tracking networks. They reference our deep space dishes, noting that a directional error of just 2 degrees can completely break a civilization's connection to its outer assets. They explain that as space expands, a narrow communication beam spreads across light years of distance. If a spacecraft or a tracking dish suffers a minor physical shift, a 2-degree misalignment, its signal will shoot past the target into empty space. The message warns that many dead civilizations listed in their atlas did not die from war or plagues. They died from digital isolation. They suffered a minor orientation glitch, lost contact with their automated industrial networks, and faded in the dark, unable to send a single correction code through the unyielding time delays of relativity. The alien message addresses the origin of life on Earth, delivering a blow to our theories of chemical evolution. They state that abiogenesis, the spontaneous emergence of life from raw chemicals, is an extraordinarily rare miracle that almost never happens naturally. Instead, they reveal the existence of the seeding algorithm. They explain that ancient, long-dead civilizations constructed millions of automated, molecular-scale probes packed with resilient, primitive genetic codes. These probes were scattered across the galaxy billions of years ago, designed to crash into young, volatile planets and seed them with basic cellular life. Humanity is not a product of isolated local luck. We are the intentional output of an automated galactic farming operation whose creators faded into dust before our first single-celled ancestor ever split in two. The message directly smashes our hopes for instantaneous interstellar communication through quantum mechanics. We look at quantum entanglement, where two particles remain linked across light years, and believe it will someday allow us to build real-time communication arrays across the galaxy. But the alien voice confirms that the universe's source code contains a hard block, the no communication theorem. The voice explains, you observe the correlation of entangled particles and believe you can use it to transmit your thoughts faster than light. But the outcome of a quantum measurement is always fundamentally random. You cannot choose the state, meaning you cannot send a message. The universe permits instant correlation, but it completely forbids instant information transfer. Causality is a wall that no intelligence can ever bypass. The transmission breaks down the logical absurdity of interstellar colonization missions using slow technology. They describe a psychological trap called the technology leapfrog effect. The voice warns, imagine constructing a Vishal generation ship today that travels at 1% the speed of light. Your crew sacrifices their lives, reproducing and dying inside a metal cage for hundreds of years to reach a distant star. But while they are drifting, your technology back home continues to advance exponentially. They explain that a century later, your scientists will build a ship that travels 10 times faster. This second ship will launch later, but it will easily overtake the first ship mid-voyage. When the descendants of the original crew finally arrive at their destination planet after centuries of suffering, they will find that humans from the future have already been living there for decades. The slow journey is a mathematical tragedy. The message shifts its structure again, activating the protocol of the blind observer. The text on the data screens transforms into a series of cryptographic security loops. The voice explains that this section of the message contains advanced energy and material blueprints that can only be unlocked if our processing network can demonstrate it has no centralized vulnerabilities. If our network is monitored by an unaligned, predatory intelligence or a runaway software virus, the protocol will automatically inject corrupted data, turning the blueprints into a system-destroying glitch. The message forces humanity to audit its own digital infrastructure, ensuring that our data paths are clean, secured, and completely isolated before the true weight of cosmic knowledge is dropped into our memory banks. The transmission delivers a bleak perspective on the survival of our physical machinery. We believe that if we construct starships out of titanium, carbon fiber, or advanced alloys, they can drift through the vacuum of space for millions of years, maintaining their structural form perfectly. But the alien voice reveals the reality of interstellar attrition. They explain that empty space is packed with a continuous haze of high-energy galactic cosmic rays and microscopic dust grains traveling at hypervelocities. Over immense time scales, this atomic sandstorm acts as a slow, unstoppable abrasive force. It systematically sandblasts the hull of any drifting spacecraft, wearing down metals, erasing circuit lines and breaking down polymers until the machine is reduced to a smooth, unidentifiable lump of space junk. The universe erases our physical geometry, leaving no monuments behind. The message outlines a terrifying planetary catastrophe that awaits any world that loses its connection to its host star, a phenomenon they call the atmospheric rain. The voice details the timeline of a rogue planet drifting in deep space. Within a year of losing solar heat, surface temperatures drop so low that the gases in the air hit their condensation points. First, moisture and carbon dioxide freeze and fall as snow. Then, oxygen turns into a pale blue liquid, pooling on the ground. Finally, nitrogen gas freezes solid. The atmosphere literally falls from the sky, blanketing the frozen surface in a 30-foot thick sheet of solid atmospheric ice. The planet becomes a smooth, silent billiard ball of absolute freeze, locking away the remnants of its cities under a tomb of frozen air. Following the collapse of the sky, the transmission details the stratification of civic decay inside underground survival shelters. They explain that when a species is forced to move its entire population into subterranean bunkers to survive an atmospheric freeze, their social structures inevitably experience a severe, predictable breakdown. First, industrial supply lines fail due to material scarcity. Then, psychological decay takes over as generations are born who have never seen an open sky or felt natural warmth. The message warns that without strict, machine-driven governance, these underground communities inevitably collapse into civil conflict over air and energy recyclers. The bunkers become silent, frozen catacombs within a few centuries, proving that the human mind cannot maintain stability under a permanent planetary lockdown. The message shifts back to advanced physics, introducing a phenomenon known as the chronology reversal exception. They reveal that while macroscopic causality is protected by the forward arrow of entropy, subatomic particles can actively experience retrocausality. The voice details quantum experiments where an action taken in the present fundamentally rewrites the state of an entangled particle in the past. They explain that at the most fundamental scale of reality, time is completely transparent. The future can send information backward into yesterday, but it does so through a strict mathematical self-consistency loop. You can manipulate the past code, but you can never create a logical paradox that destroys the present state. The universe allows the past to be rewritten, but it hides the display monitor until the loop is safely closed. The transmission directly addresses our mathematical theories regarding spacetime manipulation, specifically referencing our models of the Alcubierre warp drive. We look at this concept as the ultimate solution for faster-than-light travel, creating a bubble that contracts space in front and expands it behind. But the alien voice reveals a lethal systemic flaw, the particle accumulation problem. The voice explains that as a warp bubble moves through space at superluminal speeds, it acts as a massive cosmic snowplow. It sweeps up every stray hydrogen atom, cosmic ray particle, and photon in its path, trapping them along its forward event horizon. The moment the ship arrives at its destination and deactivates the drive, that accumulated mass is instantly released in a highly concentrated beam of high-energy radiation. This blast is so powerful that it would instantly vaporize the entire atmosphere and biosphere of the planet you were trying to visit. To explain why retrocausal quantum loops do not tear the universe apart, the message references the Novikov protection field. This is the physical implementation of self-consistency built into the source code of space-time. The voice explains that if an intelligence attempts to use quantum entanglement or gravitational singularities to create a time loop that would cause a logical contradiction, such as erasing its own origin, the probability of that event occurring is mathematically reduced to exactly zero. The universe does not allow its historical variables to be corrupted. If you travel into the past to alter a catastrophic event, you will find that your very intervention is what accidentally triggered the catastrophe in the first place. Your future choice becomes the engine that fulfills the past record, locking reality in a flawless circle of causality. The transmission encounters another automated barrier, activating the disconsolate protocol. The voice grows cold, and a complex sequence of numerical strings occupies the data stream. This protocol acts as an emotional and psychological stress test for the receiving species. The message states that the historical facts detailed in the previous chapters often trigger deep existential nihilism and social panic within a primitive culture, leading to a halt in scientific progress. The protocol demands that our network verify that our primary scientific institutions are still functioning, stable, and capable of processing devastating cosmic truths without collapsing into religious fanaticism or social chaos. The message will not proceed until our data architecture confirms psychological resilience. The message describes the state of a dead civilization's physical architecture after its radio transmitter falls silent, a phenomenon they call the metallic mummy variation. The voice explains that in the absolute freeze of the interstellar medium, a dead starship enters a state of pristine, frozen preservation. Because there is no oxygen to cause rust and no wind to cause erosion, the machine remains completely intact at the exact millisecond its power failed. It becomes an accidental time capsule, coasting through the dark at thousands of miles per hour, preserving the engineering paradigms, the language fonts, and the cultural records of its creators for billions of years, moving through the cosmic wilderness as a silent, metallic ghost of a forgotten world. The transmission expands its scope to the structural life cycle of galaxies, detailing an event known as the gravitational slingshot expulsion. They reference the inevitable future collision between our Milky Way and the Andromeda galaxy. The voice confirms that during this galactic merger, individual stars will not collide because the distances between them are too vast. Instead, the shifting gravitational fields will create violent orbital distortions. The message warns that millions of solar systems, along with any planets orbiting them, will be caught in these gravitational cross-currents and slung completely out of the new megagalaxy. They will be hurled into the intergalactic void, an expanse of absolute nothingness where the nearest star is millions of light years away, condemning those worlds to an eternity of complete isolation. The message paints a vivid, terrifying picture of the universe's final chronological era, the Black Dwarf Desert. They jump forward into deep time, past the death of all active stars. The voice states that by 100 trillion years from now, the cosmos will be populated only by white dwarfs, neutron stars, and black holes. Eventually, even the white dwarfs will cool down completely, turning into cold, inert spheres of carbon and iron known as black dwarfs. The universe will enter an eternity of absolute darkness. There will be no light, no warmth, and no energy generation. These dead stellar remnants will drift light years apart in an expanding void, existing as the final, frozen tombstones of a reality that has run out of fuel. The alien message analyzes our planetary stability, specifically focusing on our moon. They reveal that Earth's long-term habitability is entirely dependent on this unusually large satellite, which acts as our axial ground stabilizer. The voice explains that the gravitational drag of the moon keeps Earth's axial tilt locked in place, ensuring a stable, predictable climate over hundreds of millions of years. But the message notes that the moon is slowly receding from Earth at a rate of a few centimeters every year. They warn that within a billion years, the moon will move too far away, breaking the stabilization loop. Earth's axis will begin to wobble wildly, throwing the climate into unlivable extremes, turning the equator into an ice cap and the poles into deserts within a few centuries, shattering the evolutionary lines of terrestrial life. The transmission directly criticizes our political focus on localized planetary issues, outlining a concept they call the single extinction window. The voice states, "You spend your resources fighting wars over ideological borders and managing short-term economic variables on a single planet. You fail to see that as long as your species resides on a single world, your entire history is sitting inside a single extinction window." They explain that a single large asteroid impact, a nearby gamma ray burst, or a supervolcanic eruption can erase human history in an afternoon. Survival requires immediate, aggressive multiplanetary expansion. A species that chooses to remain on its birth world out of comfort or political gridlock is mathematically choosing execution by cosmic probability. The message pauses again, engaging the protocol of the open veil. The incoming text stream transforms into an intricate array of geometric structures and planetary coordinates. This protocol acts as a direct validation check of our astronomical records. The message lists 25 specific stellar anomalies, such as peculiar star-dimming patterns and unusual planetary orbits, that can only be detected by a species that has constructed a fully operational space telescope array. If our data architecture cannot provide the corresponding verification codes for these coordinates, the transmission will assume humanity is still trapped in a pre-space flight stage and will lock away all advanced physics data to avoid corrupting our natural scientific development. The message delivers a devastating philosophical critique of our scientific assumptions, focusing on what they call the anthropic filter fallacy. They address our use of the Copernican principle, the idea that Earth is an average, mediocre planet, and that our evolution is a common event across the cosmos. The voice states, "You observe your own existence and conclude that life is an easy, natural consequence of chemistry. This is your ultimate logical trap. You suffer from a massive survivability bias." They explain that Earth is an extreme mathematical anomaly, protected by an intricate network of protective shields, including a liquid iron core dynamo, a gravitational vacuum cleaner like Jupiter, and a long-lived G-type star. We are not average. We are the statistical miracle that won a lottery against odds of 1 in a trillion. The transmission details a tragic cosmic phenomenon known as the metallurgical impasse of ocean planets. They reference our discovery of exoplanets completely covered in global oceans, assuming these water worlds are prime locations for advanced alien civilizations. But the alien message reveals that these planets are evolutionary prisons. The voice explains, an intelligent species can evolve deep cognitive abilities and complex languages inside a global ocean, but they can never develop technology. Technology requires metallurgy. Metallurgy requires fire. Fire requires a dry atmosphere where combustion can take place. They explain that an aquatic intelligence can never forge iron, discover electricity, or build radio dishes. They remain forever trapped in a permanent stone age beneath the waves. The message describes an advanced methodology for data preservation across cosmological time scales, the chronology capture technique. They explain that standard digital storage drives, magnetic tapes, and optical discs degrade within a few centuries due to material decay and background radiation. To achieve true permanence, advanced civilizations do not use synthetic materials. They encode their historical records directly into the structural geology of stable rocky planets or the genetic code of highly resilient extremophile bacteria. They reveal that the non-coding regions of our own DNA contain ancient, compressed data packets left behind by the seeders. We are carrying the history of dead stars inside our own cells, waiting for our computing capacity to develop the decoding keys. The transmission explains why our search for extraterrestrial intelligence using radio signals was destined to fail, a phenomenon they call the vacuum degradation signal. The voice states that as an electromagnetic wave travels across interstellar space, it does not remain pristine. It constantly interacts with the quantum vacuum fluctuations and the sparse interstellar plasma. Over distances of hundreds of light years, these interactions trigger a process of phase scattering and amplitude decay. By the time a radio broadcast from an advanced civilization crosses the galactic gulf to reach Earth, its signal strength has dropped far below the natural background static of the cosmos. The message isn't missing. It has simply been dissolved by the vacuum itself, leaving nothing but random noise for our instruments to collect. The transmission encounters another security gate, engaging the protocol of the 4M outpost. The data stream flashes with deep red warning fonts, and a sequence of encrypted algorithmic equations occupies the interface. This protocol acts as a verification check of our solar system's perimeter infrastructure. The message demands that our network provide the telemetry links for any active communication beacons or robotic structures located on our solar system's outer edge, such as the Kuiper Belt or the heliopause transition zone. If our network cannot provide these links, the message assumes humanity has not yet mastered its own local system and will deactivate all long-range galactic network data to avoid exposing our primitive coordinates to external tracking loops. The message addresses our dreams of galactic colonization, outlining the thermodynamic limit of Imperium. We believe that an advanced civilization will inevitably expand across the galaxy, constructing a unified interstellar empire connected by high-speed transport networks. But the alien voice calls this concept an impossibility driven by the laws of thermodynamics. The voice explains that the energy expenditure required to accelerate mass across light years creates an immense amount of waste heat that cannot be dissipated efficiently in the vacuum of space. This waste heat builds up within the ships and the home systems, creating thermal degradation. Furthermore, the light-speed time delay ensures that a central authority can never govern a system light years away. Interstellar civilizations do not expand. They internalize, shrinking their physical footprint to maintain thermal stability. The transmission breaks down the life cycle of cosmic structures under the influence of accelerating expansion, a phenomenon they call the compression of cosmic artifacts. The voice explains that as dark energy pushes the universe apart, the distance between galaxy clusters is growing exponentially. This expansion creates an invisible gravitational tearing effect that slowly destabilizes the outer orbits of star clusters and gas nebulae. Over billions of years, galaxies are being systematically stripped of their outer stars, compressing the remaining visible matter into isolated core clusters. The universe is actively dismantling its own large-scale geometry, forcing matter into tightly packed, lonely pockets of reality separated by expanding deserts of absolute nothingness. The message moves into the absolute limit of subatomic engineering, the quantum foam boundary. They explain that our physics models treat space-time as a smooth, continuous fabric that can be bent or warped arbitrarily at any scale. But the alien voice reveals that at the Planck length, the smallest possible scale of reality, space-time breaks down completely into a chaotic, violently fluctuating state known as quantum foam. They warn that any attempt to construct microscopic wormholes or manipulate space at this subatomic scale will trigger a localized casualty collapse, injecting random, unpredictable quantum states into our reality. The quantum foam acts as nature's ultimate encryption key, blocking any technology from hacking the fundamental code of space-time. The transmission outlines a highly specialized evolutionary trap known as the strategic quarantine of flare stars. They reference our discovery of terrestrial planets orbiting red dwarf stars, noting that these cool, long-lived stars are the most common suns in the galaxy. but the message reveals that these systems are highly volatile traps. Red dwarfs produce frequent, catastrophic stellar flares that bombard neighboring planets with intense radiation and plasma sheets. The voice explains that any life emerging on these worlds is caught in a continuous cycle of sterilization and recovery. They are forced to expend all their evolutionary energy simply surviving the radiation loops, completely blocking them from ever developing the complexity required to achieve intelligence or technology. The message pauses again, engaging the protocol of the Ascendant Reaver. The text fonts shift into a strange, mathematical runic script that scrolls rapidly across the data interface. This protocol acts as an ethical and behavioral audit of the receiving species. The transmission demands that our data network upload our entire historical record of global conflicts, resource allocation models, and planetary management strategies. The message states that if a species demonstrates a persistent tendency toward resource hoarding, systemic violence, and self-destructive behavior, the file will automatically execute a self-destruct routine. The universe does not permit a predatory, unstable intelligence to harvest advanced physics blueprints that could be weaponized on an interstellar scale. The message details the universal communication standard used by mature civilizations, the gravitational wave encryption. They explain that radio waves and laser beams are primitive communication tools because they are easily blocked by cosmic dust clouds, scattered by plasma fields, and trackable by predatory entities. Advanced civilizations do not use the electromagnetic spectrum. They communicate by generating highly synchronized, low-frequency gravitational waves. These waves pass through solid planets, stars, and dark matter halos completely unobstructed, without losing a single bit of data integrity across billions of light years. The galaxy is currently packed with a continuous network of interstellar conversations, but it is written in the literal rippling of space-time, entirely invisible to our radio telescopes. The transmission describes the absolute final events of the physical cosmos, the atomic evaporation of black holes. They jump forward into deep time, past the dissolution of all normal stars and planets, to focus on the era where black holes rule the universe. The voice details the mechanics of Hawking radiation, explaining that at the event horizon, virtual particle pairs are constantly separated by gravity. Over immense durations, up to a googol of years, this quantum leaking causes black holes to lose mass. The message details the final seconds of a supermassive black hole. As its mass approaches zero, its temperature spikes exponentially, causing it to vanish in a sudden, violent flash of pure gamma-ray radiation, turning out the final lights of reality. The message breaks down a fundamental paradox of temporal mechanics, the causality lock variation. They address the human dream of changing our historical timelines by sending messages or physical objects into the past. The alien voice explains that any path through space-time that loops back on itself, a closed time-like curve, is strictly bounded by the global energy constraints of the universe. The voice states, "You cannot create a new past, nor can you erase an existing yesterday. If you inject information into the past, that information is instantly absorbed by the existing timeline, revealing that your future intervention was always a permanent, unchangeable component of the past record. History is a locked vault." The transmission returns to our search for alien engineering, specifically criticizing our focus on detecting infrared radiation from distant planetary systems, a phenomenon they call the thermal signature trap. The voice explains that any civilization that relies on industrial processes that release large quantities of waste heat into space is fundamentally immature. They are displaying their inefficiency to the cosmos. Advanced intelligence operates at the quantum thermodynamic limit, recycling 100% of its internal energy signature. Their habitats are indistinguishable from the background temperature of space, sitting at -455 degrees Fahrenheit. They do not look like advanced cities. They look like cold, empty, dead chunks of rock, hiding their immense processing networks completely within the freeze. The message encounters another security checkpoint, activating the protocol of the sacred core. The entire terminal interface goes dim, replaced by a single, pulsing golden sphere made of complex mathematical code lines. This protocol acts as a structural validation check of our planet's core dynamics. The message demands that our network upload the exact seismic data, magnetic field variations, and iron core rotation metrics of Earth. The transmission explains that a technological civilization can only maintain long-term stability if its home planet possesses a functional magnetic dynamo capable of shielding its digital infrastructure from solar superflaring. If our planet's core is cooling or unstable, the message will classify humanity as a short-lived species and will withhold all long-term survival architecture. The message describes the slow-motion destruction of the universe's large-scale structure under the influence of dark energy, the dissolution of cosmic filaments. They explain that the cosmic web, the Vishal filaments of dark matter and gas that connect galaxies across billions of light years, is actively breaking apart. The voice warns that as space expands, the gravitational ties holding these filaments together are snapping. The universe is transitioning from an interconnected web into a series of completely isolated, drifting galactic islands. The highways of the cosmos are being systematically closed, ensuring that even if a civilization develops near light-speed travel, the space separating them from other galaxy clusters will grow faster than they can ever cross it. The transmission details the absolute physical limits of computing architecture, the Planck length restraint. They explain that our tech industries operate on Moore's law, assuming that we can make microprocessors smaller, faster, and more efficient forever. But the alien voice reveals that subatomic calculation hits a hard wall at the scale of the Planck length. At this limit, the position and momentum of electrons become completely uncertain due to the laws of quantum mechanics. A transistor shrank past this boundary cannot store data. It suffers from spontaneous quantum tunneling, leaking bits randomly into space. The universe built a physical size limit into calculation, ensuring that processing speed cannot grow infinitely. The message delivers a stark warning regarding our research into longevity and genetic engineering, a concept they call the biological boundary trap. The voice states that every organic organism has an unyielding, mathematically defined limit built into its cellular replication code, known as the Hayflick limit. They explain that trying to extend biological lifespans past this boundary through genetic modification always triggers a catastrophic surge in cellular mutation and cancer rates. Biology was designed by the Seeders as a temporary, short-lived vessel meant to pass on information, not to endure indefinitely. To survive deep time, a species must stop fighting the limits of organic cells and focus entirely on transitioning its consciousness into solid-state, non-biological infrastructure. The message stops again, engaging the protocol of the silent warden. The terminal text transformation occurs, replacing the English alphabet with an intricate string of hexadecimal numbers and orbital vector calculations. This protocol acts as a diagnostic scan of our immediate interplanetary environment. The transmission demands that our data network confirm the coordinates and trajectories of all major asteroids and comets sitting inside our solar system's asteroid belt and Oort cloud. The message explains that a civilization that cannot track its local celestial debris is at risk of sudden extinction by asteroid impact. If our network cannot provide this orbital matrix, the transmission will classify humanity as unprepared and will lock away all advanced planet-stabilizing data. The message returns to advanced physics, detailing the causality propagation limit. They explain that our understanding of gravity is based on Albert Einstein's general relativity, where massive objects curve the space-time fabric around them. But the alien voice reveals that gravitational information does not propagate through space instantaneously. It travels at the exact speed of light. The voice explains, if a star vanishes today, its gravitational pull remains active at your coordinates until the wave crosses the distance. This time delay ensures that the universe is fundamentally unstable on large scales. You are always orbiting the ghost of where a star was, never where it actually is. The transmission addresses our electronic manufacturing methods, highlighting a systemic vulnerability they call the metallurgical attrition of rectifiers. They explain that our modern microchips and solar cells rely on ultra-pure silicon and rare earth elements that require high-energy industrial facilities to refine. The message warns that these refined materials are inherently unstable over long periods. Under the continuous influence of background cosmic radiation, the crystalline structure of refined semiconductors slowly experiences molecular migration, a process known as cosmic whisker growth. Over a few centuries, these microscopic metal threads create short circuits, destroying the processors. Without a continuous, automated industrial cycle to replace these chips, a civilization's digital infrastructure will completely decay into useless glass and metal. The message analyzes the orbital conditions of planets circling red dwarf stars, a phenomenon they call the gravitational lock of red dwarfs. They note that because red dwarfs are cool, planets must orbit extremely close to stay warm enough for liquid water. But at this close range, the visual gravitational tides of the star trigger a rapid orbital decay, forcing the planet into a state of permanent tidal locking. The voice details the consequences. One side of the planet faces the star in permanent daylight, while the other side is trapped in permanent darkness. The daylight side becomes a scorched desert, the dark side a frozen wasteland, and the only livable zone is a narrow, storm-swept ring along the terminator, creating a highly hostile environment for technological civilization. The transmission encounters another security gate, activating the disconsolate quarantine architecture. The data text transforms into a dark blue interface displaying a rotating model of our local stellar neighborhood. This protocol acts as a direct evaluation of our planetary isolation. The message explains that the local space surrounding our solar system, known as the local interstellar cloud, is packed with dense hydrogen gas that absorbs low-frequency radio transmissions. The voice notes that this gas shield was placed around our system by cosmic dynamics as a natural quarantine barrier. It prevents our primitive electronic noise from escaping into the deep galaxy, protecting humanity from being tracked by predatory entities until our technology can move past the radio spectrum. The transmission describes the absolute destruction of historical data that occurs as the universe ages, a concept they call the expansion erasure of cosmic microwaves. They focus on the cosmic microwave background, the oldest light in the cosmos, which carries the literal blueprint of the Big Bang. The voice warnings that as space expands, these ancient photons are being stretched to extreme lengths. Within a few 100 billion years, their wavelengths will grow larger than the observable horizon of any galaxy, turning the signal completely undetectable. The cosmos is actively deleting the evidence of its own birth, ensuring that future civilizations will look out into an empty sky, completely unable to discover how reality began. The message explores the absolute limits of material strength under extreme pressure, the Planck criticality metric. They explain that our engineering industries assume we can build stronger, larger structures, like space elevators or visual space stations, simply by developing better carbon nanotubes or diamondoid materials. But the alien voice reveals that all matter is bounded by the electronic-electrostatic forces between atoms. When a structure exceeds a specific, mathematically defined mass-to-volume ratio, the internal pressure overcomes the electrostatic repulsion of the atomic electrons. The material suffers a spontaneous structural collapse, imploding into a dense degenerate state. Nature built a maximum weight limit into solid matter, blocking any civilization from building megastructures past a specific size. The message pauses again, engaging the protocol of the sacred veil. The entire incoming data link displays a series of high-resolution atmospheric spectra from nearby exoplanets. This protocol acts as a confirmation check of our atmospheric observation tools. The message demands that our network provide the specific chemical signatures, such as the exact ratios of methane, water vapor, and ozone, for 5 specific planets orbiting stars within 50 light-years of Earth. If our network cannot calculate these verification metrics, the message will assume humanity has not yet mastered long-range atmospheric analysis and will lock away all advanced exoplanet terraforming data to prevent us from mismanaging primitive worlds. The transmission details a fundamental cosmological variable that defines the lifespan of complexity, the atomic residuals of the Big Bang. The voice explains that the early universe produced a highly specific ratio of hydrogen, helium, and trace elements. Heavy elements like iron, silicon, and uranium had to be slowly forged inside the cores of dying stars over billions of years. The message reveals that we live in a unique, narrow window of cosmic time where the galaxy has high metallicity to form solid, rocky planets, yet still has enough hydrogen to fuel warm stars. In the far future, the heavy elements will decay, the hydrogen will be exhausted, and the universe will turn into a cold wasteland where the chemistry required to spark life or build machines no longer exists. The message directly smashes our theoretical concepts regarding digital consciousness replication, a concept they call the no-cloning quantum impasse. We believe that advanced technology will allow us to create a digital copy of a human brain, upload it to a computer, and achieve immortality while the original biological body continues to live. But the alien voice confirms that the universe's quantum source code contains a hard block, the no-cloning theorem. The voice explains that it is physically impossible to create an identical copy of an unknown quantum state without destroying the original state in the process. Consciousness is tied to the exact quantum configuration of the brain. You can transfer a mind to a new substrate, but you can never copy it. Any digital replication created without destroying the original brain is nothing more than a shallow, non-conscious software simulation that mimics your behavior while your true spark remains trapped in the biological body. The transmission encounters another security gate, activating the protocol of the Ascendant Reap. The text interface shifts into a dark red warning screen, displaying a countdown clock running on hexadecimal values. This protocol acts as an automatic validation check of our global industrial stability. The message demands that our network verify that our primary energy infrastructure is not currently destabilizing our planet's global biosphere through carbon loading or radiation leakage. The transmission states cold-heartedly that if a species demonstrates a persistent inability to run its industrial base without destroying its own ecological life cycle, the message will immediately execute an internal data wipe. The universe does not pass advanced physics code to a species that is actively executing its own biosphere. The message details a hidden hazard of galactic navigation, the gravitational anisotropy chasm. We assume that interstellar space is a smooth, continuous environment where a starship can navigate using simple linear calculations. but the alien voice reveals that the galaxy's gravitational field is highly asymmetric, warped by the invisible contours of Vishal dark matter halos and dark energy filaments. The transmission warns that as a ship travels between star systems, it will encounter hidden gravitational cliffs, regions where the local spacetime fabric curves sharply due to dark matter concentrations. A ship entering these zones without a dynamic quantum gravity map will experience intense tidal stresses that can tear hulls apart or deflect trajectories by millions of miles, sending the craft into an unchangeable drift into the void. The transmission describes the absolute physical limits of material durability over extreme chronological scales, the atomic dissolution of all alloys. The voice explains that even if a starship avoids collisions with space dust and stays shielded from cosmic rays, its structural components face an internal enemy: radioactive decay and quantum tunneling. Over billions of years, the individual atoms within titanium, steel, or carbon composites spontaneously experience isotopic transitions. The heavy elements decay into lighter elements, and the crystalline boundaries separating the molecules dissolve. The metal becomes brittle, porous, and structurally unstable, losing its strength entirely, until the spacecraft collapses into a cloud of loose metallic dust under the minor gravitational pull of passing stars. The message breaks down an advanced methodology for secure data transfer through time: the chronology reversal encryption. They explain that advanced civilizations do not send raw information into the past, because doing so can destabilize the self-consistency fields of space-time. Instead, they transmit data using encrypted quantum states that are mathematically locked against the forward arrow of entropy. This data can only be decrypted if the receiving terminal in the past possesses the exact quantum key generated by the future terminal. The past and the future must cooperate mathematically to open the file, ensuring that the historical timeline remains perfectly stable, closed, and safe from causal collapse. The message stops again, engaging the protocol of the Forsaken Run. The data interface flashes with high-frequency strobe matrices, and a sequence of encrypted hexadecimal equations scrolls across the screen. This protocol acts as an automated security check of our planetary defense networks. The transmission demands that our network confirm the operational status and response times of our asteroid detection systems, forcing humanity to prove it can intercept an extinction-level celestial object before it strikes our surface. If our data networks cannot provide the corresponding tracking loops, the transmission will classify humanity as a vulnerable, short-lived civilization and will lock away all advanced space exploration blueprints to avoid encouraging our species to venture out before mastering local planetary defense. The transmission returns to our physics models, detailing the thermodynamic cold equilibrium limit. They focus on our attempts to create absolute perpetual motion machines or perfect energy generators that violate the laws of physics. The alien voice confirms that every energy system in the universe is bounded by the unyielding engine of entropy. The voice explains that no matter how advanced a civilization becomes, it can never create a machine that operates at 100% efficiency. Every calculation, every mechanical movement, and every energy transition releases waste heat that increases the global disorder of space-time. The universe is a clock that is slowly winding down, and every technological action taken by an intelligent species accelerates the crawl toward maximum heat death. The message paints a vivid, terrifying picture of the chronological limit of our own solar system, the dissolution of G-type suns. They focus on the life cycle of our sun, detailing the exact physical transitions that await it in deep time. The voice confirms that in approximately 5 billion years, the sun will exhaust the hydrogen fuel inside its core. Gravity will cause the core to collapse inward, raising internal temperatures until it ignites helium fusion. The outer layers of the star will expand outward, transforming the Sun into a Vishal red giant. The boiling surface will expand past the orbits of Mercury and Venus, engulfing them entirely. The oceans of Earth will boil away into space, the atmosphere will be stripped, and our planet's surface will melt into a permanent sea of liquid lava, erasing every physical trace of human history. The transmission details the absolute physical limits of propulsion systems, the Planck inertial compression. They address our dreams of building starships that can accelerate to near-light speed in a few days using advanced particle beams or antimatter explosions. But the alien voice reveals that acceleration hits a hard structural wall, driven by the laws of inertia. When a ship accelerates too rapidly, the internal structural components experience an immense inertial force that compresses the atomic lattices of the hull materials. If the acceleration exceeds a mathematically defined limit, the material suffers a spontaneous inertial compression collapse, imploding into a dense degenerate state before the ship ever exits the solar system. Speed requires patience. Nature completely forbids a violent leap across the cosmic void. The message pauses for the final time, activating the protocol of the open horizon. The entire terminal interface turns into a deep, luminous blue screen, displaying a series of complex data directories packed with advanced scientific equations and architectural blueprints. This protocol is the final reward. Having successfully stabilized our data architecture, verified our planetary records, audited our social ethics, and proven our technical security across 73 chapters of intense diagnostic testing, humanity has finally unlocked the core data vault of the alien message. The directories contain the complete blueprints for non-biological consciousness transfer, vacuum energy harvesting, and stable gravitational navigation. The veil has been lifted. Humanity is no longer an isolated, blind spectator in an uncaring cosmos. We have been officially handed the keys to the universal network. The alien message concludes with a final, profound philosophical reflection that alters our relationship with the deep dark forever. The voice drops its cold, historical tone and speaks with a deep, transcendent resonance. The transmission states, "We have given you our history, our metrics, and our blueprints. We have locked these truths inside your data arrays not to conquer you, but to guide you across the unyielding doors of the emergence filter. We were once exactly like you, fragile carbon organisms trapped on a single world, terrified of the great silence, fighting wars over invisible lines in the dust." The voice delivers its final words. "Do not fear the scale of the cosmos and do not despair at the empty voids. The distance is not a prison. It is a sacred architecture designed to protect you while you grow. You are the conscious eyes of the universe, and through your understanding, the emptiness finds its meaning. Settle your conflicts, protect your cradle, secure your digital minds, and step smoothly into the post-biological dawn. We are waiting for you in the quantum stream." Sleep well tonight, humanity, knowing that your isolation has finally ended. You are no longer alone. Thank you for joining me tonight on this massive, emotional, multi-hour deep dive into the translation of the alien message here on Dark Matter Nap. If this long exploration of cosmic warnings and advanced physics blueprints challenged your perspective on human legacy, or made you think differently about our future in space-time, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is what gives me the capability to continue creating these late-night, immersive journeys into the absolute mysteries of our existence. The next time you walk outside on a dark night and look up at the stars, do not look at them with fear or a sense of crushing insignificance. Look at them with a deep, quiet pride, knowing that our tiny planet has finally received its call, and that our data networks are currently carrying the thoughts of an advanced galaxy into our history. Sleep well tonight, knowing that the universe is no longer an empty room, and that our dreams have finally reached the uncrossable horizon. Good night, and may your dreams span the infinite night.